Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We start by the Pledge of Allegiance. All stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We will now have solicitor announcements.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Zoning Hearing Board. The board did meet in executive session prior to this evening's hearing to discuss questions of law related to this evening's applications and ongoing litigation. There are no continuances on this evening's agenda. And then finally, meeting procedures. For those of you who are not applicants or here with applicants as their witnesses, there are two ways to participate in this evening's proceedings. The first is public comment. At the end of each hearing, we'll give an opportunity for public comment. Public comment are statements in support or in opposition to the relief being requested. If you feel you are more particularly aggrieved or affected by the relief being requested, at the beginning of each hearing, we will seek people who are interested in requesting party status. Party status is an elevated way of participating in the hearings that is afforded to people who live in close proximity or have some type of property interest in close proximity to the subject property. If you are granted party status, it will give you the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant's witnesses, present testimony and evidence of your own, receive a copy of the board's written decision, and if you disagree with that decision, it gives you the right to take an appeal to the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. If you think you do intend to request party status on any of these applications, there is a form up on the little table in the front corner. We would ask you to fill that out and have it ready for the hearing so that I can have your contact information. It allows us to keep in touch with you and provide you with those entitlements that I just outlined. I would ask anybody filling out that form to please, if you have one, please provide me with your email address. It is the most effective way of us getting you timely communication and making sure all parties are included on all communications related to the matter. We appreciate your cooperation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. We will now begin with case application 9-2 of 24, 168 Shadeland Avenue LLC. Seeking a variance from section 550-15D, table 4.2, to permit a lot size of less than a minimum required lot size of 3,000 feet per dwelling unit. And B, a variance from section 550-33A, table 8.1, to permit 2 parking spaces where 4 parking spaces are required. You may
Good evening,
proceed.
everyone. My name is Stuart Lundy. I'm the attorney for the applicant. Lundy, L-U-N-D-Y.
Great. Mr. Lundy, before you begin, the board will enter the following exhibit. ZHB1 will be the application packet. ZHB2 will be the notice photos, and ZHB3 will be the proof of publication. Are there any persons present this evening who are requesting party status for this application? All right, seeing none. Mr. Lundy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The applicant is seeking a variance for this property because if the board is not familiar with this property is zoned for a single-family home. It's a twin at this location. However, this property has on it a driveway easement and is immediately adjacent to 174 apartment units known as Lindenwald Apartments. There are 3 separate buildings comprising 174 units. One of the problems with this particular application is there are only 2 parking spaces on the property. However, when I say immediately adjacent, the property line for the Lindenwald Apartments touches the property line for 168 Shadeland Avenue. That has an overabundance of parking to the point where the owner of the Lindenwald Apartments, who's with me today, Connor Woodward, for the entity there, and also the principal of 168 Shadeland Avenue, if the variance is granted, will record a perpetual easement for an additional 2 parking spaces. Now, these aren't far away. If you're parking your car where these 2 chairs are, the other 2 spaces are on the opposite side. They're immediately adjacent to the other 2 parking spaces. So for all intents and purposes, this property will not only have 4 parking spaces, but will look like it has 4 parking spaces because there is no wall. There's a driveway easement that goes direct from 168 Shadeland Avenue directly to the Lindenwald Apartments, the 174 units. The other point I want to stress is that if you grant this application, this will not be any change in the character of the neighborhood. This neighborhood is filled with twin units and duplexes. This will just be creating another duplex in this neighborhood, where to this point there was a single-family home. Now, the funny thing about this single-family home, which was bought immediately after the Lindenwald Apartments were bought, because it had this driveway easement that led to the Lindenwald Apartments, and so it was important to preserve it for ingress and egress, and we did not want to take a chance that anything would go on at 168 Shadeland to affect it, is 168 Shadeland has already this lower, what we're calling duplex unit. There is no access from the upper unit to the lower unit. The prior owner took the stairs, which were, I'll use the word dangerous. I don't know whether they conform to code or not. So the people living upstairs could not get to the downstairs in any event. If they wanted to go to the downstairs, they had to go outside and go through the existing exterior door. So it has been, for all intensive purposes, a duplex, although no one has been living down there. It has a bathroom, it has all the electric and all the other utilities that a second residential unit would have, but no one, even to this day, is living there. The only thing that it's actually missing is the installation of the kitchen appliances, which would go in there, where there's already plumbing and electric hookups. It's not like a major renovation has to be done. It already is set up for a second unit. So since there is no access to the first unit, it kind of presents a unique hardship. You would have to break through the floor or the ceiling or the floor above to create an access for the home that's above, which has no access now, except from the exterior. So for all of those reasons, we think there is some unique hardship to this property. We think because of the existing driveway easement that runs to the 174 units, and we think because there's 174 units immediately adjacent to this property, converting it, the zoning, allowing a duplex, granting this variance, would not have any effect upon the neighborhood and would be a natural occurrence. It would be as if the Lindenwald Apartments had 176 units instead of 174. So the applicant asked the board to consider this as a very unique property that's adjacent to a multifamily development that will not affect the neighborhood at all if the variance is granted.
Mr. Lundy, I assume your testimony is an offer of proof in
That
this
is
matter.
correct.
So if we can just have your client
Mr.
come up
Woodward here.
and have him sworn in.
I do. Connor Woodward. Connor. Last name Woodward, Woodward.
Mr. Woodward, you're the owner of 168 Shadeland, or I guess the general partner of 168 Shadeland LLC.
Yes,
And you heard Mr. Lundy's representations on your behalf,
yes,
and do you adopt them as your own testimony?
yes, I do.
And do you believe them to be true
Yes,
and accurate?
yes.
And is there anything else you'd like to add to the testimony as presented by Mr. Lundy?
Only that the apartment complex that's immediately adjacent, 174 units he mentioned, right now our occupancy is at a point where we only have 4 vacant apartments, and yet I have 20 vacant unassigned parking spots. So I have the parking spots to facilitate the recorded easement easily. And, I appreciate your consideration.
Open it up for board questions.
So just so I'm clear, you're the applicant, but you also have ownership interest in the complex as well? Is that what, okay. Is there, do you know the square footage of the lot
It's under the requirement for a normal duplex of 6,000. It's approximately 2,664 square feet. I believe that's on the application.
and is there an agreement, a parking agreement already executed, like a conditional parking agreement?
No, there's just the driveway easement between the two properties. We would, as a condition of the variance, record the parking easement, granting 2 perpetual parking spaces to 168 Shadeland Avenue.
I'm the general partner for both entities. I represent the apartment complex and 168 Shadeland, so.
I would recommend to the board, if they're inclined to approve the variances, that that condition be attached as a condition of approval. And I would also suggest that that be accomplished within 3 months of the approval.
Yeah, that would easily be accomplished.
Or 90 days, I think is a better way to.
What is the principle of both properties?
Other questions?
I just have a question, just for my own visual sake. Where would these parking spaces be for? I know you have ample parking just because of the lot size in the back. Where would they be? Would they use spaces that are to the right? Or would they have space closer on the left side of where those steps are?
I'd have to look at the photo, I think.
Oh, I'm
that
just
you-
looking at the Google
but,
Maps
If
photo.
we could see that photo, he could point
Yeah.
that out to you. May he approach?
I think the question is
Is
if
it-
you're on Shadeland Avenue
Right,
and you're looking at 168 Shadeland, which is next to the driveway,
yes.
where are the parking spaces going to be located? Are they going to be designated specific parking spaces for 168 to use? Or are they just going to have general access to use spaces in the Lindenwood West apartment complex lot?
So every parking spot at Lindenwood has a unique identified number, and I can assign the 2 spaces that are closest, or 4 spaces that are closest to 168 Shadeland. So if you're looking at an aerial, and you see the driveway, I can put them, there's 4 spots directly behind the house that I can put them.
I mean, there'd be as if you walked out the back door of the house, you
Yeah,
would have
they're
the
right there.
parking spaces right there, all 4. It already has 2. There would just be 2 more added to it.
Right.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah.
Other board questions?
None? Like to make a
Do
motion?
some public comment?
Is there any public comment? Okay, none being available. I'd like to make a motion.
Second it?
Okay, I would like to make a
Approve it.
motion to approve.
And Madam Chair, just for the record, will the board be attaching a condition that a perpetual easement be recorded for an additional 2 spots within 90 days of approval?
Yes, that would be the condition
Is this,
going along with the approval.
does the
Can I
second
get a
agree to that?
second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
You'll receive a written decision within 45 days.
Thank you.
thank you, Greg. Okay, let's move on to 10-1 of 24. 27 South Third Street LLC. It's in a C4 commercial district, a special exception pursuant to section 558, table 3-1, to permit the housing and slaughtering of live poultry, goats, and cows.
Good evening, Mr. McCreesh.
Hi, Mr.
Good evening,
McCreesh.
good evening, members of the
Before we
board.
begin, I'll do my usual routine here. The board will enter the following exhibits. ZHB 1 will be the application packet, ZHB 2 will be the notice photos, and ZHB 3 will be the proof of publication. Is there anyone present this evening who would like to request party status on this application? Sir, can you please come forward? If you can just let this gentleman up to the microphone for a moment. Sir, did you fill out the form?
Yeah,
All right, if I can have that, please. got all the information. I can make this work.
Sorry, I was writing on my lap.
It's all right. No, it's actually the wrong form, but
Oh,
that's okay. It's all here as long as I have your information. So, Mr. Cartman, I know you just spelled it for the court, but you reside at
I don't
20,
reside, that's my place of business.
your place of business is 21 South Third?
Yeah,
And what's the proximity to
next door.
27 South Third?
Oh,
The proximity to 27 South Third?
is right next door to
Okay.
the proposed slaughterhouse.
Mr. McCreesh, do you have any objection to Mr. Cartman's recognition as party?
No.
Okay, then I would recommend to the board we recognize Mr. Cartman as a party. Is there any objection to that?
None.
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 All right. So, Mr. Cartman, you are a party. I will acknowledge you when it's your turn to ask questions or give testimony, but for now, you can have a seat. Any other parties? All right, seeing none, Mr. McCreesh, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Elliott. He does have one other exhibit, kind of a sketch of where everything will be and what it'll look like.
You know what, we'll take this one. Can we give one to Mr. Cartman, though?
Give one to Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I think we give one to Mr. Cartman. We'll mark this as A1.
The Kamran Sarwar, and he is one of the members of 27 South Lansdowne, is it Lansdowne Avenue?
27 South Third
LLC.
Lansdowne
South
LLC.
Third, you're right, correct. LLC, and if you want to,
Yeah, first name Cameron, Kamran, last name Sarwar.
okay, and they are equitable owner in the property as they have this property under agreement of sale, contingent on zoning board approval. It's approximately 42 by 92 building, which is about 3,800 square feet. And as the application says, they are going to, this is for Hala, which is live poultry and animals which are slaughtered in
So
for
we'll be
the
processing,
for the
poultry.
Islamic
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
So Mr. Sarwar, could you explain to the board a little bit about the process?
Yeah, let's swear him in first.
Okay. Oh, you
yeah,
didn't do it. I'm sorry. I th- Okay. So Mr. Sarwar, can you explain to the board what you're going to do at this property and your experience in the animal business?
The background, yeah. So we're, this is going to be a processing place for poultry and livestock, lambs and goats, et cetera. And so I've owned a farm for the last 15 years in Alverson, PA. Actually owner and I actually reside there. So I'm pretty familiar with, how to keep poultry, goats and lambs and, how to keep them in the best humane way possible. So there is a need for halal meat. Halal meat is just another way of saying kosher. It's just, you can say kosher meat, the Muslim way of blessing the meat. So currently, right now, people are, in need of this meat where there's, a huge community of Bangladeshis and other Muslim folks that actually end up going to Reading, Lancaster, Allentown, all these places. They're taking their business all the way over there. And this would actually create jobs as well. And there are other communities that actually will benefit from, this type of meat, fresh meat, the Hispanic community and I think the Asian folks as well. So, this is just another way of giving the community what they need and not having them travel all the way out to different counties and places.
How many employees would you have?
So we'll need one caretaker. We'll make sure that, the livestock or the birds that are there, they get food and water. And then one person's responsibility to make sure that it's clean, Clorox and water, whatever needed to make sure, you know, it's all nice and clean all the time. And then obviously we'll need 2-3 folks that would be doing the processing.
And
So
it-
about 4 to 5 people.
And what hours would you be open?
So we're looking, we're anticipating at the moment 10 to 6 or 10 to 7, depending on the need.
Okay, and how many days a week would that be?
At the moment, we're looking at 6. Not sure if this will go up or you know, we'll shave off a day depending on, like I said, the need, yeah.
Okay, and how many animals or poultry do you expect to be at the
So for a
location?
week, we're looking anywhere from 200 to 300 birds.
Okay, but at one time,
Right.
okay, for the week, or, but how many per day you get?
So for per day, you can say maybe 40, 50 birds.
And how many would be able to be in the cages there?
So depending on the size of the cage, there are
Mhm.
different sizes that, you know, we can accommodate, depending on, the room that we will have. And, you know, each cage can accommodate anywhere. There will be, sections and, you know, 5 birds, let's say, each section.
And you also have to, if you're approved, you have to get licensed through the
Yes,
USDA?
we're actually planning to also go through USDA, so we'll follow the USDA protocol as well. We'll
Okay.
be, yeah, licensed, yep.
All right, and how about any other safety or protocols regarding ventilation or odors or things like that?
So the size of the place that we have, we're actually looking to have at least 4 ventilation systems. And these are the heavy-duty ones, CFMI systems, that once you're using that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with these livestock processing places, it does not make the smell go outside at all. It's actually it keeps the air nice and clean, and these get serviced. So these are top-of-the-line heavy-duty systems. And you can look them up, CFMI, yeah.
And how much do they cost?
Each is $5,000.
Okay, and you plan to have 4, and you have planned?
We'll need at least 4, given the size. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And how many do you plan to have there?
4.
The property, it dead ends into the railroad, or?
We're actually at the corner, right next to the railroad, and in front of us is actually, I think it's just a little road that leads out to the street. And then on the other side of the road is that area is also all industrial area. So we don't have any residential folks that are in that area. And we're actually on the corner as well. So, I mean, it's, we're a good block or 2 away from residential area.
Don't have any more questions of Mr. Sarwar. I don't know if the board has any questions.
First, we're going to see if Mr. Cartman, do you have any questions for?
Oh, you said something about the smell.
Hold on. Come on up. So I'm going to, just to explain how this works, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make statements and argument for the board. But right now, if you have any questions for this witness, this is your opportunity to ask him questions.
Well, you mentioned about the smell of the livestock, and I don't believe it won't smell. That's my comment, and I have customers come to my place of business. And also, I've owned that property for 20 years.
So Mr. Cartman,
Oh.
just questions right
Questions?
now.
No, and how about traffic patterns? How many trucks will be coming in and out? Because I have deliveries, and will it greatly impact?
Yes, if you can answer his questions about
Over
deliveries.
to the mic.
Delivered either very early in the morning or late in the night. So I don't think it's going to be on anybody's way.
And I guess I'll follow up on that. What type of delivery vehicles are bringing the livestock
So
here?
let's say they're delivering 10 goats, those goats will be delivered at nighttime.
think he means.
Oh, it's in
section.
a trailer. Yeah, they're in a livestock trailer. Not a tractor trailer, not a 18-wheeler or anything like that. So these are smaller. So goats do not require you to have a big, huge trailer. This trailer can be, I don't know, 15 feet long or 10 feet long. So goats do not require a huge trailer.
What about the cattle?
The cattle, so this is not a huge cattle processing place. So let's say if we're getting 2 or 3 cattle, it can also be delivered in a horse trailer, which accommodates 2 horses. So small, it's not going to be a huge transportation.
Mr. Cartman, other questions for this witness?
Well, I don't know if it's for him, but I'm just wondering how much it's going to affect the value of my property. Well, you know, if I come to sell it and there's a slaughterhouse next to it, I could see that could be a problem. And I think that it would detriment to my business and to my property.
Right, thank you. And I'll give you another opportunity to
Yeah.
make statements to the board. So thank you, Mr. Cartman.
Do you want me to answer that?
No, that's.
That was a comment.
How close is he to the other?
So,
property?
board questions for,
I was gonna, Mr. Cartman,
Yes.
can you identify how close you are, your property to the proposed?
Exactly next door.
Yeah, they abut each other.
I used to own that property too. I bought that years ago and I sold it to Jim Miller and he sold it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm right next
he's in
to it.
close vicinity.
you're separated by what, 20 feet, the buildings?
Not even that, probably 10 feet.
Okay.
And, yeah, maybe 20 feet. I don't know, I guess, but it's very close.
You can fit a vehicle
Yeah,
easily
yeah,
between the
yeah.
buildings.
Mhm.
Okay. Other board questions?
And which side is your?
Well, if you face the property, I'm on the right side, right before the end of the block. And there's also 2 residential people right up the street too, which I think would affect them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I did have a question around transportation, and I think you answered that for all types of livestock. Security around that, and I'm just imagining when they're being delivered, or I don't know what happens after they're slaughtered, but what type of safety, security is in place? What if one of the chickens get out, or if a container of chickens get out? I'm just hypothetically saying, what type of security or measures will be in place to,
Chickens getting out on the road.
so if you said they're coming in, I don't know where your loading dock is and how they would be transported. Once they're there, how are they being transported from the vehicle to your building?
So they're in
And
the
this-
coops. So the coop gets delivered to the place.
So the.
They're
coop-
not hand taking them out. So the whole.
Okay,
coop
so
will
the
get delivered.
cage just goes
Right,
into the
right.
building, okay?
Yeah.
And
And
there's
the
no.
cage is a flat cage, like about this big.
Mhm.
No, it's just 1 story, and they just deliver that to you. So they're not hand delivering them, each bird.
Okay. Is there any risk whatsoever that any of the animals could?
I don't see a risk of, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. These animals, are they coming from your farm?
They're actually coming from New Holland, sales stable.
But
from
is
New
that a
Holland, PA.
one that you own?
Oh, no. They're coming from the sales stable, Pennsylvania auction, in New Holland, PA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you said you have a farm, I guess, but the animals aren't coming from there. Do you have other locations, slaughterhouse locations like this in urban environments?
I do not.
So
But
this
that
would
was
be
just
your,
my experience that I was sharing earlier. I'm sorry if that confused.
no, I'm not
yeah.
confused. What I'm saying I understand that you have a farm. What I'm asking, have you managed, operated, been a part of any slaughterhouse in a urban environment?
So.
Would this be
and-
your
and
first time doing this?
This is the first time doing it in this setup, but I have seen farms that manage livestock and processing that takes place in the farm setting. So I'm familiar with that.
Okay, so I guess the operation, I know obviously you're the applicant, so have some sort of interest in the ownership. that's under, that's seeking to acquire this space, would you also be integrally involved in the actual operation of this business? Is that like a separate entity than the applicant?
No, I'll be involved. Yeah, I'll be at the location.
Okay, in the floor plan you provided, there's a space that says mini market. So is your intention to also do retail sales
Yeah.
of, I guess, the products
Right, so let's say,
at post launch?
we have USDA involved, so we'll have a USDA doctor will manage and, you know, they will, foresee of the operation. So we'll have stamped meat, which will get packed and available in the location. That's right in front of the facility.
Are,
That's why we have the walk-in cooler and,
okay.
yeah, sorry.
So are retail sales also a permitted use? Or are they a permitted use in the C4? Question for the zoning officer.
Yes, retail sales would be a permitted use in the C4.
Is there a parking requirement for retail sales in the C4?
There is. It's not by zoning district. It was just it's by use. So it would depend on the square footage of the space that's going to be designated for retail. So what would that square footage be?
So it looks like 33 by 31. Does that sound accurate according to your plans?
But this
Thereabouts.
proposed structure building envelope is the entire parcel, right?
That's the entire parcel, correct, which is about, like I said, just under 4,000 square feet.
And you're saying 1,000,
Well,
give or take.
the
is
only
gonna
reason
be
I asked
parking.
about that is because, well, there was the use was not represented as having a retail element. And then the parking calculation, I think, will be twofold of the area for retail use as well as the area that's designated to the processing facility. I don't know if that calculation has been done. I know we have a exhibit that depicts 6 vehicles.
Right, it looks like about, it looks like it's about 1,000 square feet for, because it looks like you're correct. It looks like it's about 30 by 33 is the retail area,
Right.
which would be about 900 square feet.
And the,
give or take.
what's the remaining space? So that would be 4.092 spaces for retail.
Yeah, they have room for, on the proposal, they have 6 parking spots on the side.
Oh, no, I
Yep.
know that. What's the remaining?
Public parking.
No, that's not street parking, that's
That's part of the lot.
That's part of the lot.
That's part of his lot, is his driveway, and it goes to the back. There's even room to park in the back for the employees, 3 or 4 spaces. But that's like a driveway that abuts up to the fence to the railroad. That's part of the lot. That's not.
And then
It looks to be about 46 by 124.
46
sound
by
accurate?
124. All right, so
I mean,
57.
I'm not trying to put evidence on here. I'm just going off of the
What, 46 would,
the rest of the building. 40 the footprint is 46 by 124. Looks like you'd have to subtract out
correct.
the 900 square feet to get the processing
Well,
square
I
footage.
think 124 is the whole lot size. The
Do you know,
county has
the footprint of the
Yeah,
building?
The county has the building as 42 by 92
Okay. 42 by 92 minus 900.
from right.
That's the whole thing?
Well,
Minus
42 by
900?
22, 42 by 92 would be the footprint.
That's what I have from the county website.
And then we'd have to subtract out the
So total.
retail space. Can we mark this as A2 then? We'll mark A2 as the county square footage calculation.
And you said the size of the retail space was roughly 1,000?
I believe so.
Okay. So that leaves a remainder 2,864. Assuming we classify this as either a manufacturing or a packing plant, it would be 1 per 300. So that would need 10 spaces, so we're looking at around 14 spaces total. The only other question we could ask is what was the existing use, and is this less or equivalent parking to that?
What is the use prior, do you know the prior use? Oh,
The
well,
other
we'll ask you
gentleman.
later.
It was owned by Jim Miller, Roofing. Not sure exactly what they used. There was a roofing company. I'm not sure exactly what they used it for. I think it might have been warehouse.
But these are all
Storage.
industrial uses, right, Josh? They would be the same classification of use.
Yes, warehousing. Oh, actually, warehousing is a little bit different. Warehousing is 1 space per 1,000 square feet of floor area. So this would be more. So they would be required to meet the new requirement then. Yeah, because that would only be, and which probably makes sense for that site, like 4 parking spaces.
So I guess before we take more testimony here, I think the mini mart has kind of thrown us off of our linear pattern. We're going to have to address parking, and I guess it's the applicant's option. We can proceed on just this special exception at this moment, and you'll have to return under a separate application for the parking if you want to look at it closer, or we can continue, amend, and renotice.
So the solicitor is asking, which I was kind of pointing out.
Do you
is
want
this-
to do you want to do it on the record, or do you want to go off the record for a minute and
I'll
confirm
go
with
off
your
the
client?
record for a
Okay,
second. Yeah.
we'll take a pause.
Just 1 second. Here, no, we just said. So the solicitor's asking, you want to get the special exception now, and then you'd have to come back. Because you need variance for the parking. Or we could continue this till next month and have it all in one thing. If the mini market is vital to the project. Okay, in that case, since he needs to have the mini market,
Okay.
so,
So-
then I would suggest we continue.
Well,
and-
before we get to the formality of continuing, because Mr. Cartman's here as well,
Mhm.
I don't want to steamroll his part of this here. So, are there further board questions at this time? There are other board.
Not about the parking.
So I think we should have further board, if both Mr. Cartman and Mr. McCreesh, you agree to this, we'll wrap up the board questions here for this witness, complete that part of the record, and then we'll allow Mr. Cartman to put on his testimony related to the use. And then we can move into continuing it to notice for parking relief and revisit that part and any other further testimony that the parties may deem necessary at the subsequent hearing. Is that acceptable to everybody? Mr. Cartman, I see you're nodding. Mr. McCreesh, you're okay with that? All right, let's jump back. I'm sorry to have derailed us right next to these train tracks.
You did.
But let's hop back on. I had it noted as well, so we were going to get there eventually. But go
did
ahead.
Have questions around the mini market and looking at the floor plan. Will there be, I guess there's only one door from the animal and slaughter area that leads into the mini market, it appears. Will there be any customers coming in? Would you smell anything?
So the processing section is totally separate in the back,
Mhm.
and the mini market is the front of the location. So no, there wouldn't be any smell.
No, I'm just thinking ventilation events.
Yeah,
And,
so we have all the ventilations, and in a similar setup, there's actually not too far away from this location, another setup like this, and there is no smell in that location as well.
another
that- yeah.
slaughterhouse?
Similar, yeah, it's not, actually, it's not a slaughterhouse, so this is a livestock
Processing
processing
plant.
place,
So
yeah.
it's the same as yours?
Yes,
Similar.
same setup. Yeah.
That's on, and that's on 14, I think that's 14 4th Street, I believe. Medina,
Okay.
I think
Just
it's
to be-
called, I think it's called Medina Market. I believe it's at 14 4th Street.
So you were saying there's another, some type of meat processing facility, whatever
It's-
we're going to
would
label
be
it
on-
as.
You can, if you Google it and look at it, it is a very similar setup to what they will have. And that's operational and it's like a couple blocks away. And,
It's 1 block away.
I think
This is,
huh?
It's not
we're,
related to us.
No, it's not related to them, but it's the same type of business. It's, I think it's called Medina, Madina. I think it's 14 4th Street. But you can see they have a picture of, and if you look at that picture, that will give you an idea of what their facility will look like.
Is this a 1-floor presentation?
One floor.
My last question would be around sanitation and cleaning. I heard you make a mention about you would have a person, one person would be a caretaker, one would be doing the cleaning, and you mentioned using bleach and I guess other chemicals. So my concern would be, where does the runoff go? Like, where does it go? To the drain, into public I just don't know about the business. So where would,
So just the water part of it and the cleaning part of it goes into the drain, yes.
the drain which goes to the public
Right,
Goes into sewer?
sewer?
yes.
Okay.
What about, you talked about like deliveries of the livestock and poultry would be either early, I guess in the day, or late in the
Right.
evenings. So I guess that means your 10 to 7 hours time frame you're talking about was about just like the public facing purchase part of it for the stores.
That's
But
it, yeah.
so the facility itself is actually operating, what, 24 hours? Like,
So the haulers, they can bring, and there will be a guy, because there has to be a caretaker at all times to give them water and food.
mhm,
So the caretaker would always be there.
okay.
So so haulers can drop it to him and he makes sure that everything gets locked up and in place.
Okay, and then what is the, I guess, plan, because I guess you said the USDA regulates a lot of this. I don't know if there's any sort of local regulation or regulatory bodies that are also involved, but I'm wondering about like the livestock waste. Like, what do you,
Oh, so,
how do you deal with that
yeah,
in again, in sort of an urban setting? Like, I know it's a little different on a farm, but I'm trying to get a sense of
Yeah.
what that looks like.
so what will happen,
Darby.
all the waste from the animal will go to this company called Darling. They're a known, animal waste company. They come and they, we can schedule them, and they will come and take everything away that gets picked up by them. This company called Darling.
What's the frequency on that? Again, I don't.
So it all depends on your use. So, you can have them come in every day, or you can have them come in every other day, depending on the use that you have.
And so do you keep the waste? That's what I was talking about as well. I didn't say waste, but.
Like storage.
Where do you put it until it's picked up and?
So
how is
it gets stored in the container given by them inside the facility, and they come and they empty it, they take it.
Is it a refrigerated container?
We'll have refrigerator and freezer in the location.
No, for the waste, how is it stored? Is it, so if you were to walk me through
Right.
your cleanup of the waste, what would that look like?
So it will not be stored in an open, I don't know if you're referring to like open area, will be stored into a cool area where, it's not sitting outside or rotting or anything like that.
But how is it done? That's what I'm.
It's in its own container given by them, by the company.
So I know it's going to a container.
Right.
The waste is on the floor. So is there a hose, vacuum? I'm just curious because, I guess sanitation, I guess that's what I'm thinking of, and into the, air that is filtered throughout the building. That's why.
Can I,
So,
can I
okay.
try to interface this? I think what the witness is saying is that, tell me if I'm wrong here,
Yeah.
but the meat is processed on like a countertop, right? And it's broken down and the waste is put into essentially a specialized trash can.
We're talking about the waste generated by the
Just by
animals
the animals, not
that
the
are
animals.
alive.
Yeah, that are
Gotcha.
there.
Okay.
What happens with that?
The manure.
That will, so there are two different type of waste. So one will be animal waste that would go to Darling. And then,
Sorry.
the other waste that you're talking about, maybe old hay, and, you're talking about like their droppings and things like that, that would go to another place, yeah, that would go to the local pickup, they will pick up.
I think we
The
just have
trash
to stop
company.
using the term waste. I think we're confusing things here, and I don't think it's gonna be very clear on the record, because you just try to clarify it, and I'm still not clear. So what type of material does Darling pick up?
So Darling would only pick up, let's say, animal hide and, animal waste, meaning.
So we're talking about bones,
bone,
sinew,
exactly.
anything that's not sold in your store and is discarded from the animal
That
product.
would go to Darling.
That goes to Darling.
Right.
And then there's another hauler that comes in and gets manure, dirty hay, changed out straw, all the,
Pick up, yeah.
okay. And how often does Darling come?
Darling, we can schedule them every day as needed.
So if you're operating every day, you're processing animals every day,
Right,
are they
so we'll-
coming every day?
Yes, they will come every day then, yeah.
And how often does the agricultural waste hauler come?
I believe they have their days, but I know if needed, you can call them for a special pickup.
So they'll come like a trash hauler, they'll come Mondays and
They're more like
Thursdays.
trash haulers, yes.
They come on a regular set days a week, but you can call them for a
You can
bulk
call them
pickup.
if you have access, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that, now we're all on the same page? Okay.
Where do they take the waste to?
Say
Where
that
do they take the waste to?
They just have, the different companies have different use for it. The animal waste, goes towards something else. It has to be disposed separately. That's why Darling is, just designated just for this type of use. You're welcome.
Our stenographer has it. Is it Darling? Darling?
I'll double check the spelling, but it is Darling, yeah.
Something like
That's
that.
what they're called, yeah.
No.
Darling, yeah, yeah. But I'll double check the spelling as well myself, yeah.
Like, be a darling, clean this up.
Don't be sexist.
Other board questions? All right. So we're gonna thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Cartman, we're now going to give you the opportunity to testify. So this is your opportunity to make any statements you want, anything you want to present to the board. I will tell you, Mr. McCreesh will have the opportunity to ask you questions as well.
Okay,
Okay.
well, I just was there the other day and
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we swear you in?
yes.
You swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Your name one more time?
Jonathan Cartman. Yeah, there is a parking problem on the street already. It was just, to my, observation the other day, there was ticketing all over the place. There's a body shop that has cars all over the place. There's, a paving company next to me that they park on the sidewalks. I think it will be an absolute mess with parking, considering the retail. I didn't even know that aspect of it. And I don't believe that, it won't smell in there with waste. And were you saying locally pick up, like the trash people from the township pick up it's not a private company that he's talking about. The waste is going to sit there with, defecation and I have employees there every day and customers come into my shop. It's going to be a detriment to my business and to my property. And I strongly protest this application.
Mr. McCreesh, you have any questions for Mr. Cartman?
No question.
All right. So, Yes, board can ask questions.
Mr. Carpenter, what is your business?
I have a fire protection business. I've been there, in business for 42 years. My office is in Havertown, but my shop has been there for 20 years. My stepfather was a business owner for many years, Sam Malove Tire. That's where I started my business on Baltimore Avenue. So I've been in that neighborhood for over 40 years with no problems. I just see this as a really bad thing. I just learned about it the other day when I was looking at the door and noticed, and that's why I'm here today.
Well, at least the notice works. Any other board questions for Mr. Cartman? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cartman.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think we should see if there's any public comment with the understanding for the public that we will be revisiting this issue again, but if there's anybody here tonight who wants to comment who is maybe unavailable on November 26th, we can give them the opportunity tonight.
That being said, is there any public comments? Okay.
So at this point, we will continue this application, application 10-1 of 24 to November 26, 2024 at 7 p.m. here in the municipal building. And we will, Josh will coordinate with you on renoticing, and let's confirm all the numbers for the square footage to ensure that we have the right parking counts. Thank you. Mr. Cartman, you're welcome to come. You will retain party status, so if you want to come back. I'm not going to email you. So you have notice now. So we're going to meet the fourth Tuesday of November, the 26th. So you're still a party if you want to come back and participate further. Okay.
Okay. Moving forward, we have 10-2 of 24, Francis Click, is that correct? 318 Owen Avenue in Lansdowne, PA. It's in the R1 residential district, requesting a special exception pursuant to section 550-48B3 to replace a destroyed non-conforming garage to the previously existing height and area.
Thank you.
Hold on, before you start, Mr. Click, can someone grab that door? Oh, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. The board's going to enter the following exhibits. ZHB1 will be the application packet. ZHB2 will be the notice photos, and ZHB3 will be the proof of publication. You're Mr. Click?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can we have Mr. Click, and you're representing yourself?
Yes, I am.
Can we have Mr. Click sworn in?
Can you raise your hand? Do you swear or affirm?
I do. Francis Click, K-L-I-C-K.
So, Mr. Click, if you can explain what the situation is and why you are entitled to relief from the zoning hearing board.
Yeah, the reason I'm here is because I had a legally non-conforming garage that was destroyed by an oak tree to completely uproot it behind my property. The way I understand it from talking to Joshua and Courtney is that in order for me to get a permit to rebuild, I need to go through the special exception process. So here I am. Just to give you a background on the property, the house and the garage were both built in 1925, close to a century ago. I've been the property owner since 1976, 48 years, and I've maintained the property as best I can. In regards to going through this process, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear relative to the timelines. So the way I understand it, in May of 2010, a new ordinance was put in place with some amendments that basically raised the maximum height of a garage to a 15-foot height. That's as high as you could go. The garage height that existed on the property for close to 100 years was around 17 feet. My intent was to replace the garage to its existing stature
and move forward. And I was told that I couldn't get a permit to do that until I went through an approval process with you guys. So here I am. I provided them with as much information as I possibly could. I gave them the deed to the property, which showed the dimensions of the property. I gave them a picture of the existing building. I gave them a copy of the tree sitting on the garage that was totally collapsed. I presented them also with a copy of the 2018 property tax reassessment. It gives you a footprint of the property. I gave them a copy of the drawings that I received from the contractor I plan to employ, and also the proposal. In addition to that, I took a picture from street view of a neighbor who lives 2 doors down from me, who has a similar garage that's 19 feet in height and sits on a 20 by 20 property. So when you look at the garage, it was basically 20 by 20, a story and a half, basically 400 square feet on the bottom and 240 at the top. That's what we're looking at.
So, Mr. Click, just a couple questions for you from me as a solicitor. The new garage is no taller or larger than your previous garage, correct?
No, sir.
And even though it's non-conforming in a couple ways, is it in close proximity to any other homes or features on a neighboring property?
No, sir.
Okay. And then finally, you mentioned a story and a half. I'm assuming there's parking garage space on the first floor, and I noticed in the floor plans there's
Yes, sir.
steps up.
If you take a look at the pictures, it's a story and a half. It's basically 20 by 20, 400 square feet roughly on the bottom. It has a gambrel roof on it.
Yes.
Both the house, the garage were built in a Dutch colonial style.
But what's the use of the second floor, I guess, is my question.
Second floor is storage that I basically need. I've raised 4 children.
That I'm just making sure that that's what it is.
Resale value of the property. I'm trying to bring it back to where it originally was.
And there's no intention for the second floor of the garage to be finished living space in any way?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so I'm going to take that underneath our code, since it's just storage space on a residential property, would not require any additional parking on this property because it's not adding living space.
Yeah, just to let you know, on our street, Mr. Gwynn probably knows this, we basically have 2-hour parking on the west side of the street. The other issue we have is the electrical lines run between the backyard properties of Owen Avenue and Windermere. This tree was actually sitting in the right of way when it came down. So it's pretty much, some of it was on my property, some of it was on my neighbor's property. But as we all know, from an insurance perspective, wherever it falls, it's your responsibility.
So
That's the dilemma I've been in.
before we open it up to board questions, we'll note that the section of the code that requires a special exception states that a non-conforming structure of which more than 50% of the floor and roof area is destroyed, or a non-conforming structure which has been legally condemned, may be rebuilt only if permitted as a special exception and subject to the following conditions, which were reflected in the 3 questions that I asked Mr. Click, to confirm that the replacement structure does not exceed the height, area, and volume of the previous structure, that it will not be materially detrimental to the surrounding area or the interest of the township, and that the replacement structure will not require more parking than the previous structure. With that, if there are any board questions for Mr. Click.
Yes, I did have just one. Did I hear you say in 2010, the maximum height was 15 feet? And then but your garage was 17 feet?
The way I understood it, the way it was explained to me when I went to visit L&I personnel to discuss the situation, is somewhere along the line, I'm assuming it was in May of 2010, there was a 15-foot height restriction put in code for accessory buildings. That's the
And,
way I understood it.
okay,
Now, keep in mind that I took ownership of the property 34 years prior to that being put in place, which basically moved my garage from conforming
right,
to
to
legally
not- right.
non-conforming.
Got it. That's why I want to make sure I was clear. And yours was 17 feet high.
Pardon me?
Yours was 17 feet high.
Yes,
Yes,
as,
okay. I just want to make sure.
Look, I
Approximate.
don't think many people go out and take pictures and measure their garages.
Right.
But to the best of my ability with the data that I've provided you,
No, I just want
that's
to make sure. I
pretty
had it right
much
in my
where it's
head.
at.
Yeah, okay.
I actually went back and looked at the lines that run behind the garage. I got 6 lines on a pole between the properties. Got the hot wire line up top that's probably at 35, 40 feet. You got secondary line, which is probably somewhere around 19. If you take a look at the picture of the garage, the original picture of the garage, you'll see that that's sitting probably a couple feet off the peak. And then you got 4 cable wires, Comcast, Verizon. In fact, the tree was actually, I had a Comcast wire behind the tree and a Fios line in front of the tree.
Had you not had the tree fall, you would have been happily living there with
I'd
your.
be fine. And I actually had that tree. I mean, the tree, been there 48 years. I've never had a problem with the tree. And I actually had somebody come out to remove a small maple on the side lot back in 2000, I want to say 18. And I had him look at the oak tree. It's a large white oak tree. I mean, this tree, I was told when it was taken out, was roughly 900 pounds per foot going up for the first 10 feet of the park. Wow. It's a big, large oak tree, white oak tree. And why it uprooted, I have no idea. All I know is that weekend prior, we got 5 inches of rain that Saturday because I was driving and it was coming down in a downpour. And there actually was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer 3 days later talking about the excess amount of water that we had. In fact, the night before that tree came down, you're not going to believe this. We had rain during the evening, pretty decent amount of rain, right? And my upper gutter, down where the downspout is, got clogged up. Went in the garage, got my extension ladder out, got up, unplugged it, put it back, went back in the house. The tree the next morning actually came down like around 6 o'clock in the morning. Wow. And this is a big tree, and it did quite a bit of damage. I mean, I had my car in the garage. It totaled my car. Yeah, totaled my car, and I had, I got a lot of equipment in that garage.
But your family was okay.
That's the most important thing. Nobody got hurt. Absolutely.
Madam Chair, I did realize, and not to belabor this application any longer, but is there anybody here present who was looking for party status on this application? Okay, none, as anticipated. I just want to make sure we note that on the record.
Like, can you make a motion?
We'll have to ask for public comment first.
Do we have any public comment? Okay, great. Sorry. Okay. None being available, I would like to make a motion to approve this application.
Seconded.
All right.
All right.
So
So what's the process?
you're
moving-
approved. You'll receive a written decision within 45 days, but an approval without opposition, you are free to proceed with L&I on
Just
permits.
visit with you too? Just come down and apply, and that's okay.
You're good to go now.
Okay, well, I appreciate your help. Thanks for
Good luck.
your time.
Don't plant any new trees.
Pardon me?
Don't plant any new trees close to the garage.
Well, actually, there's 2 oaks that are sitting on my other neighbor's property behind me, which
Oh.
but I'm like, the only way I understand you can resolve this process is basically by going back to the neighbor and basically saying you got a problem with the tree and hoping you rectify it that way, and that's like, good luck.
Good luck with everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, we have application 10-3 of 24, Daniel McCuster, 8006 Arlington Avenue in Upper Darby in the R3 Residential District. On remand from the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas, the zoning hearing board will take evidence of the following requests for relief. A, interpretation determination that the use of the subject property for commercial storage is permitted as a continuation of a legally existing non-conforming use. And B, in the alternative, variance from section 558, table 3.1 to permit commercial storage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we begin, a couple housekeeping items. The board is going to mark 2 exhibits for its own purposes. The first is the order from the Court of, ZHB 1 will be the order from the Court of Common Pleas remanding this matter to the zoning hearing board. The second will be a memorandum of law that was requested by the zoning hearing board from the appellant, that was without objection from the township, which is the only party that retained party status in the underlying appeal. And so that's already been presented to the board, so we'll mark that as ZHB 2. I am going, before I turn it over to Mr. McHugh, I'm going to ask, I know we still have some people here, is there anybody in the room this evening who is going to be requesting party status for this application? Oh, we got some volunteers. I see 3. There's someone in the back? No? I'm sorry. Can you just shift? So I saw the front row, 1, 2, 3. Sir, are you also requesting party status in the pink shirt?
Pink.
Were you here for my announcement at the beginning? Okay, so party status is an elevated way of participation. If you live in close proximity or have a property interest in close proximity to the subject property at 8006 Arlington, you can request party status, and if granted, that would allow you to ask questions of the witnesses presented, present your own evidence and testimony, receive a copy of the board's written decision, and if permitted to intervene in the ongoing litigation, participate further in the Court of Common Pleas. So is that something you're looking for, or are you with you're with the appellant?
I think Mr. Gallagher, Mike Gallagher there, I think he was going to give us just a statement in favor.
Okay, so we'll have public comment. So you have witness, you call him as a witness, you'll have public comment, just so we're clear then. But the 3 people in the front row, did you fill out the form? Okay, wonderful. Can you just pass, or I'm gonna have to ask you all to come up to the microphone. Anyway. Yeah, that's fine. I know I put the zoning hearing board form out tonight. All right, so first, Karen O'Brien. Okay, ma'am. So you have a property interest at 8010 Arlington Avenue, and
Sure, Karen, O apostrophe capital B as in boy, RIEN.
can we swear in Ms. O'Brien, actually?
I do.
So you, we'll try this again. You reside at 8010 Arlington Avenue? Okay, and what is the proximity of that property to 8006?
It's maybe 30 feet at the most. I have a twin, and the other half of my twin is on a single-car driveway, the other side of which is the property.
So you're 2 doors down.
Small doors, though.
Small,
Not, it's twins, it's not.
understood. But 2 properties, okay. Mr. McHugh, do you have any objection to Ms. O'Brien being party status? Or any questions for Ms. O'Brien?
Ms. O'Brien, we know is nearby enough. Abstain.
Thank you. So I'm going to recommend we grant Ms. O'Brien party status. Is there any objection from the board?
None.
Seeing none. Okay. So you can have a seat for now. So we have Paul and Margaret Kane?
Yes.
Okay. And you reside at 8003 Arlington Avenue? And what is the location of that property in relation to 8006?
We look at it
Just about across the
straight
street.
across the street.
Mr. McHugh, are you familiar with the Canes?
Yes, I am. And I'm also, they do have standing.
All right. So we're going to recommend they grant the Canes party status. Any objection from the board? Seeing none. Thank you. Oh, we're going to have, sorry, let's have you both, are you both planning on testifying this evening?
Yes.
Okay, can we have them both sworn in too?
Paul Kane, Kane.
And Margaret.
And Mr. and Mrs. Kane, now that you're sworn in, I asked you some questions on the record before you were sworn in. Can you just affirm that those questions were true and the answers to those questions were true and accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can have a seat for now. So while you're sitting down, just similar to the last application, which you were all here for, we're going to have the applicant put on their case. You'll have the opportunity first to ask questions of their witnesses. Then the board will ask questions. After we have finished with the applicant's case, you will have the opportunity to make statements or present any evidence after that. So I'd ask you to stick to that questions during the first part, and then your testimony or statement or argument after the applicant has completed their case. All right? So Mr. McHugh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Finton McHugh, a law firm of Petrick and Wellman, D'Amico, Brown and Petrosa in media. I represent Dan McCusker. Dan is to my left here. Dan owns the property at 8006 Arlington Avenue. It's near Cedar Lane. He's on that end of the block. I'm also going to have a witness, in addition to Dan, Pat Murphy, who is in the rear of the room here. Pat is the former owner of the property. The property is 8006 Arlington Avenue, and it has been a commercial storage space and office for many decades. The property was originally built in 1900 and originally used for milling and storage until about 1972, and it has thereafter been used for commercial storage purposes with an office in the front. This use was well established in 1986 when the property was rezoned to R3 residential, and the warehouse/office use continued through from 1986 through the 2004 ownership of Mr. Murphy. He sold it to Mr. McCusker in 2015. When that happened, there was a 2015 resale certification that was issued by the township that classified the use as empty warehouse, R3. And there was the evidence that we're going to put on will demonstrate that there was no actual abandonment of the nonconforming use, and there was also no intent to abandon. And that's what the memorandum of law that I've handed up, that's what that addresses, that the fact that under Pennsylvania law, unless there is not only an actual abandonment, but if there has to be also an intent to abandon, which is obviously a subjective burden of proof to overcome the non-abandonment of the use. So unless the board has any questions of me, my first witness would be Dan McCusker.
And we're going to note that you did hand up a packet of pre-marked exhibits of A1 through A9. I assume you're going to incorporate them in your presentation in some way.
Yes.
Okay. Feel free to proceed.
Okay. So I guess, can we have both Dan and Pat sworn?
Let's just do one at a time. Can you raise your hand, please? Do you swear or affirm?
Paul,
Dan McCusker, McCusker.
Okay. So, Mr. McCusker, what is your involvement with the property at 8006 Arlington Avenue?
I'm the owner.
Okay. And moving to Exhibit A1, is that a copy of your deed to the property?
Yes,
And what's the date that you acquired the property?
July of 2015.
Okay. And on the third page of that document, does that show who the president of the company that sold you the property?
Yes.
That person is?
Pat Murphy,
Okay. And what was the entity that owned the property before you?
Penn Building Services, I believe.
Or at 8006 Property LLC?
Yeah,
Okay, and so-
8006 Property LLC, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Patrick Murphy.
that was Pat Murphy's company that owned the property.
Yes.
Mr. McHugh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have any additional copies of the packet for our other parties?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Good catch. We're going to be walking through the documents. I want to make sure they have the ability to review them. Thank you, Mr. McHugh.
Mr. McCusker, Exhibit A2, what does that show?
The front of the warehouse, front of the property, garage door, man door, and a window.
Okay.
You're tall. It's a little hard to hear you.
I'm sorry. It's a garage door, a window, and a man door.
Okay, and then there's a posting that's in the window there. Did you end up moving that posting?
Yes, it's to the curb.
Okay, and
It's
so
on the curb in plastic.
did Mr. Chass ask you to move the posting so that you actually put it on a wooden stake out more prominently
Yeah.
displayed?
Yes, so it could be read from the street.
Okay, so although the exhibit package that I'm handing out shows the zoning notice on the second page, you actually moved that more prominently to the front of the property.
Yes.
Okay. And the zoning notice that's shown inside the window there, how far is that away from the sidewalk?
About 12 feet, I would say.
Okay, so that was also readily visible?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh, we'll note that the notice photos that the board, I actually didn't mark them. ZHB3 is the notice photos. We'll add that as an exhibit as we do typically introduce them, and ZHB4 will actually be the proof of publication. Our notice photos reflect the poster being on the stake at the sidewalk line or the curb line.
Thank you. Moving on to Exhibit A3, what is that document?
It's an aerial view of the warehouse and a couple other commercial properties surrounding it. Is it
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a Google aerial view?
Google map? Yeah, it looks like, yeah, Google map. Shows my building at 8006, JP Flood next door, a plumbing supply warehouse, and then Comcast across the street from that.
Okay, so you're on the Cedar Lane side of Arlington?
See, I'm one property in off of Cedar Lane in Arlington.
Okay, and that property you said is the flood property. What is that property?
It's a scrapyard.
Okay, so you can see it from the aerial, but that yard is full of scrap metal?
Yes.
Okay, are you affiliated with that property?
No.
You mentioned that there's an auto body place. Is that to the rear of your property?
Yeah, it's back left. If you're facing back right, if you're facing my property, it's behind the row homes.
Okay, so that's where those cars are shown there?
Yeah.
And then I think you said APR, there's a heating contractor there?
It's a supply house, a plumbing supply warehouse.
Okay, and then and that's also on Cedar?
That's on Cedar, yes.
And right where the word Google is written at the kind of the bottom of that image, is that the Comcast?
Comcast, yeah.
Okay. What's on page 2?
It's the front of my building, next door to Flood.
Flood would be on the left?
Flood's on the left and mine's on the right. The garage door and the man door again.
Okay. And the residences are on the right side?
Yes.
Okay. What does page 3 show?
Just a street view looking down, I guess, from Windsor Avenue towards my building, the side of the warehouse.
Okay. Are there any windows on that side of the warehouse?
Only window is the one in the front.
Okay. So how big is the building approximately?
25 feet wide by 125 foot long, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And it only has the one window, or I guess the pair of
That,
windows in the
just
front?
the window in the front, and that's it.
What does the fourth page of Exhibit A3 show?
Another street view of it next to the scrapyard.
Okay. How about page 5?
It looks like the corner of Cedar and Arlington looking towards Lansdowne Avenue. Just shows the scrapyard, the house next across the street, and you can barely see the warehouse there.
Okay. How about the final page 6?
It's Cedar Lane looking up towards Zach and Tony's, the plumbing supply warehouse, Zach and Tony's, the scrapyard.
So the back of your building would be shown in the center there somewhere?
Be to the left of, well, there's the house. You really don't see the back of the warehouse from here. It would be on the left-hand side.
Okay. Does your building occupy pretty much the entire lot?
The whole lot.
Okay. Can you get between your property and the flood property?
I can't. but I mean, it's tight. It's probably about 16 inches. I never measured it, but it's not that wide. Just a little, not even an alley. I might be able to squeeze through it, but I never tried.
Okay. What does Exhibit A4 show?
That was pictures of when I was looking at buying the building, the inside of the warehouse, that's the office that Pat Murphy used for his business. It's all his posters and furniture and stuff in there.
Okay, so this is the front office with the window.
Front office, correct.
And so that's how it appeared in 2015?
Yep.
What are on the subsequent pages, 2, et cetera?
It's the inside of the warehouse. Shelving, stuff that he had stored there. The next page is just a Home Depot style shelving.
And this is all the stuff that was there when you were.
Stuff that was there, yep.
Is it stuff still there?
Still there, shelves are still there, most of them.
How about stuff? Is there material stored in there at all?
A couple snow blowers, some lawn mowers, just really junk, nothing, stuff of mine.
Okay, and then there's page 5, that
What's this
shows,
one here?
is that, there's a sign there that has US Open.
Yeah, the 2013 US Open, Penn Building Services, I guess, looks like you had a sponsorship or something.
And again, Penn Building Services
Penn,
was,
Penn Building Services was the owner.
okay, that was Pat Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's on the next page? Page 6.
Another view of inside the warehouse. If you came out of the office and from the garage door facing Arlington looking in,
Okay, is there another small office inside, or is it all storage behind the
it's all
office?
storage behind the office.
Okay. What's on the following page?
Just pictures of empty shelves in the warehouse next to the garage door that's on the alley side of the property. Facing it would be the right-hand side.
And then what's on page 8?
The outside view of the right-hand side of the building when you're facing it, the back corner of the building with the garage door and the little fenced-in area.
And the basketball hoop.
Are there any pages after that?
Just another picture of the garage door on the right-hand side and the warehouse wall. And then the back door at the very back of the building, it just goes back to a little courtyard or little area.
Okay. Does this building have any full bathrooms?
No full, just one powder room, basically.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble. Speak up here, but if you could speak just a little more loudly, please.
One powder room.
I'm sorry, Mr. Franklin, do you want to come up and sit in one of these?
That'd be great. I'm actually deaf in my one ear, so, thank you.
We're going to have you come up there to ask questions anyway.
Okay, great, thanks so much.
And is there any kitchen in the building?
No.
Does it have any, so you already said it has only the one window.
Yep.
Does it have any other amenities that would be suitable for residential use?
No.
Was it ever used as a residence?
No.
When you purchased the property, did you go to the township to get a resale certification?
Yes, about a month before, I went to the zoning office and asked what this property could be used for, and they gave me this L&I paper here, resale cert.
Okay, so you're looking at Exhibit A5?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the date of that, if you can read it?
July 9th, 2015.
Okay, that's about 6 days, I think, before you purchased the property?
Yes.
And what use was identified for the property?
Empty warehouse, R3.
And underneath that, what does it say about the existing use?
Where'd that be?
There.
The existing use does comply with provisions of Upper Darby zoning ordinance.
Okay, did you rely on this 2015 resale certification when you purchased the property?
Absolutely, yes.
And was that your intent at all times to use it for a commercial warehouse?
Yes.
What is Exhibit A6?
Looks like
tax code or tax,
Is
the history of the property, it looks like, what it was from, I don't know,
Okay,
from, what the use is from 72, looks like from 72 to, I can't read that, 1985, just different uses of what was there.
when you were looking at the property in 2015 to purchase it, were you given this by the township as a kind of indication of what the permits were pulled on the property?
No,
Okay, do you know who gave you this?
no, I don't know where this came from.
Okay. About halfway down the page, there's different dates. You see the dates on the left, if you can read them?
Yeah, 5/1/72, September 25th, 79.
Okay, there's, I'm honing in on, there's some dates in 1972 and 1973.
Yeah,
Does that say that does it say milling, storage, and office and other storage and milling uses?
use purpose, it just says proposed variance to legalize for, let's say, commercial, I can't read that.
A commercial.
For a commercial.
So that's the top one. And then a few lines down, there's some,
It looks like permits for masonry and add masonry to rear.
there's an 18-foot
Rear.
sidewalk.
Yep,
and
18.
a street opening.
Street opening from Pico.
What's underneath the street opening?
Milling, storage, and office, storage, milling, storage, and office. Building for storage,
Okay, and then
So-
were those in the 1972 era?
yes.
Like 1972 and 1973, I think?
Yep.
Okay, and you personally, have you witnessed this building over the years?
From when I was in high school, it's been a warehouse. And that was back in the 80s.
Okay. Was there any period of time since then that it was not a warehouse?
No, never.
Okay, what's Exhibit A7?
This was the flyer I got when it was listed for sale. It says for sale warehouse and office space.
Okay, did Mr. Murphy give this to you?
Yes,
And what, so in the top left, the highlighted section says warehouse/office
it
space.
says for sale warehouse and office space.
And there's some handwriting to the right where it says, picture when I purchased in 2004. Is that your handwriting? Whose
No,
handwriting is
it's Pat Murphy's. I'm assuming it's not mine.
that? Okay, and it says below the photo, great contractor's home base. Do you know whether this was ever used by a contractor?
I believe it was used by a couple different contractors over the years. There was a sawmill originally, a plumber had it for a little bit, a locksmith, some security guy. That's about all I know.
Okay, so effectively they would have, I assume, an office in the front and then their,
Warehouse in the back, warehouse and storage.
okay. What's Exhibit A8? Is that the deed that?
Looks like the deed, yeah.
Okay, the prior
It's
deed
a-
that went to that 8006.
806, yeah, Darlington Development Corp. That's the deed.
Okay, so that's the 2004 deed where Mr. Murphy's company bought the property.
Yes,
Okay, and that, in a legal description, and I'll help you here, it mentions that there was the prior deed to his seller was from 1974. Do you see that?
yep. 12/11/74 and recorded 12/27/94 in the office of the Recorder of Deeds.
Okay. Moving on to Exhibit A9. Is that the county's tax assessment information?
Yes,
And on the first page, there is a line item for property type. Do you see that? There's a-
taxable commercial.
Okay, so just for the board's benefit, that's about 5 or 6 lines down from the top under that first solid line. About a third of the way down the page.
Yes,
Okay, so it's taxable commercial. And then under the owner history, does that basically recite the deeds that we've been talking about where there was a 2000, your 2015 deed, Mr. Murphy's company's 2004 deed, and then the 1974 deed?
Yes,
That,
correct.
on the third page, if you could turn to that. Underneath, at the top, it has your name as the owner, and what's the word underneath that?
Commercial.
Okay, and then there is a use type under the heading, about halfway down the page where it says interior/exterior details. Do you see that?
Yes,
And the use type, what do they classify the use type as?
warehouse.
Okay, and have you been paying taxes on this property as a commercial warehouse?
Yes,
About how much in annual taxes have you been paying?
between $7,000 and $8,000 a year. I'd have to look to be exact, but it's a lot.
At any time, was it ever your intention to abandon the warehouse use?
No,
And you have been storing some things there?
yes,
And when you acquired the property, did you originally apply to the zoning hearing board?
yes,
And is that because you were denied permission essentially
to use it.
Okay. And that appeal was amazingly was hanging around in Delaware County for till basically now.
I guess, yeah, 6 years or so.
And in addition to storing things in the back, have you, is the office still being used periodically?
I use it periodically. You know, more of a place to go and answer the phone and do my own work. But that's about it.
Okay. Have you made any other improvements to the property?
Just repaired the roof. That was it.
Okay. How about security? Do you have any security?
Had cameras put on.
Okay. Have those worked over the years?
Yeah.
Have you had any issues with them?
Not many.
Okay. When we originally filed the application back in 2016, did you meet with any neighbors?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? Can you tell the board about that?
Met with some that wanted us there, wanted me there, and some that didn't want me there. And, you know, just tried to be a good neighbor and I don't do anything in there. They're more concerned about my friend who owns a scrapyard moving in, so that's what the problem seems to be, as far as I know. So,
And the use, the commercial warehouse with the office in the front, that use, would that be visible from the outside of the building?
not really, no.
Okay, I guess if you could look in the window, but other than that, there's no other way to see inside the building.
Nope.
Is it a pretty innocuous use in terms of noise and other types of offensive
Yeah,
nuisances?
there's nothing going on there, other than me going in every now and then,
Okay, and
so.
was there neighbor concerns about parking?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, they don't want trucks parked there, large trucks. I drive a pickup truck, a four-door pickup truck. That was a problem for a while, but it doesn't seem to bother them as much now. So,
Under the R3 zoning, if you were to put twin homes there, would your use or would those twin homes be expected to have more cars?
the twin homes would be a lot more parking needed.
And if the board grants our application, would you be compliant with all laws regarding storage of hazardous materials?
Yes,
And if the non-conforming use status was not granted, and we have this alternative request for a variance, on the variance side of the application, would you be able to use this building as a residence?
right now, no, I'd have to put a lot of work into it.
Okay, and are there are no residential amenities in this property?
Nope,
And would the building itself and the small size of the property, in your opinion, be a unique and unnecessary hardship?
yes.
Did you create this hardship, or was it there when you bought the property?
That's how it was when I bought it.
Would this continued warehouse/office use alter the essential character of the neighborhood?
Not at all.
Would this constitute the minimum variance if a variance was needed?
Yes.
No further questions.
I just want to, before I turn it over to Ms. O'Brien and the Haynes, two points of clarification for everybody involved. One, the discrete use that you're asking or you're representing or asking the board to interpret as being legally existing non-conforming is indoor storage, indoor commercial storage, and associated office. Is that what we're considering here?
Yes.
Okay. And the second is, I don't think we've heard you represent what type of storage you are proposing to have on the site.
I have a friend of mine who's a plumber who wants to buy the building from me. I mean, I'd rather rent it to him for the next 10, 15 years, but can't do anything until I get, the proper zoning.
So but that would be your intended use, is to rent it to a contractor for, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A contractor for storage of their
Storage
materials.
for like he can get his things out of his garage and basement and put them in the warehouse.
Thank you, Mr. McCusker. I'm going to first turn it over to Ms. O'Brien for questions of this witness.
Good evening, Mr. McCusker. Could you please tell us where you reside
Havertown,
and how long have you resided there? Roughly.
60 years.
Okay, so have you ever resided on the 8,000 block of Arlington Avenue?
No.
Okay. I'm going to start with sorry, I believe it's A4, the pictures that you showed on pages 3, 4, 5, 6. You testified that these pictures were how the property was when you went to visit it prior to purchasing. It's empty. So I'm confused as to how you're testifying that this property was used continuously, as a commercial storage when there's nothing in there but empty shelving.
Well, when Mr. Murphy sold to me, he moved his stuff out and I put some of my stuff in.
Right, but you testified that those pictures were taken the day you went to visit the property prior to purchasing it.
Never said it was the day I went to buy it.
That's what it sounded like. So, okay. So you've never lived on the block, and yet you're saying that you can testify from firsthand knowledge that this property has been used commercially. I'm confused as to how you can testify from firsthand knowledge that this property has been used continuously as a commercial warehouse when you've never lived on the block.
Well, because when my friend owned it, it was a warehouse for him for at least 10 years, and then I bought it and used it as a warehouse.
So that's not continuously, though, since the property was built in approximately 1974.
I don't know, it was built in 1900.
No, there was, as has been stated before at prior hearings.
I don't want to get into testimony about dates. If he doesn't believe it was built in 74, then you can
Okay,
you can offer evidence about construction
Okay,
and
no
use in your
problem.
testimony.
no problem.
Okay.
Excuse me one sec. Let me just, I'm in that point where I can see, I can't see, I can see, I can see. Could you please explain why you just felt the need to testify that if this use is granted, you would conform with all hazmat requirements when the proposed use has nothing to do with hazardous material?
I think it was brought up a couple of years back when they were asking what was stored in there, and they had asked if there were any hazardous materials. I said, no, I don't deal with hazardous materials.
And you have no plans to do so, correct? Okay. I think those are all the questions I have right now. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I did
ahead.
think of one. Parking. So you drive, what, like an F-250, 150?
Similar to that.
Yeah, it's like it's a big truck,
Four-door
right?
white pickup truck.
Right, and so in one of these pictures showing the front of the property, you can clearly see, excuse me, let me get the reference to the correct page. You can clearly see that no parking is allowed directly in front of the property, there's a big white painted X precluding parking there. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the correct page. Of course, now I can't find, but I'm curious, we heard in one of the prior hearings tonight that, from Josh, that you would need probably at least one dedicated parking spot if this were to be given commercial warehouse use. Where would that parking spot go?
I would say in front of the garage door.
Blocking the view of the driveway for the residents who can't see down the one-way street.
That's the only place it's the only spot in front of the building.
Right. So that's a problem. You're not allowed to park there already by existing signage and painting on the street.
Understood. So
Okay.
if, Ms. O'Brien, just so you know, at this point, do you ask the question if you want to rebut
Gotcha.
the answer in your argument, you are more than welcome to do that at that time.
Okay, it was page P3 on, I think it's Exhibit 4. You can see there's a big X. And would you propose to use the driveway adjacent to the garage?
If needed.
Only if needed? Or do you have that usage in your deed? I'm talking about the driveway adjacent.
Oh, no, I mean, I have a door there. I haven't used it, but if I need to, I'm sure I could.
You might want to consult with your counsel about that. Those are all the questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. So, Mr. and Mrs. Kane, do either of you have any questions for Mr. McCusker? All right, are you, hey, Mrs. Kane? Okay, so we're gonna have to have you come up to the microphone.
Did you not, were we not here discussing whether or not Mr. Flood could keep stuff in that building?
Yes.
In fact, there was even a plan at one time to knock the wall out from the scrapyard in order to move things in there.
That was proposed at a meeting with the former mayor and councilman to vacate the garage door on the right side of the residential alley and possibly move it to the opposite side.
Whose belongings are in there now?
Mine.
Well,
Some are my sister has some furniture in there. I have, a couple different people have stuff in there.
are you aware that Mr. Flood has driven a Bobcat in and out of there and
It
kept
was
it in there?
a couple years ago we did, yeah, that's no longer there.
Are you aware that he parks his truck there and washes it?
Yes.
Okay.
When I'm not there, he kind of is the eyes of the place for me. He keeps an eye on it.
And you stated that there is commercial properties around you. Are you aware that there is a house on the Flood property?
Yes,
And are you aware that there was a residential yard in that property? That this is an R3 neighborhood, and there's a home, and there was a residential yard with shrubs and grass that is now full of radiators and other crap. And this is why, it's impossible for us to look at your property and not see, you're trying to make it, they say it's okay for you to have a warehouse
So-
because you're next to commercial properties. But that's
Ms.
not
Kane,
commercial
so you're
property.
gonna have an opportunity to make argument. This
Yeah.
is just questions, okay?
All right. So, anyway, that's my point is that this is residential and
Okay, you're gonna give you an opportunity to come back to the microphone and make all your points that you would like to make.
I
Do you have any
one
other
additional
questions?
question. I do, sorry, it's real short.
Okay, just,
I apologize. Mr. McCusker, you testified that the property in question is surrounded by commercial properties, and you mentioned specifically Verizon, Plumbing Supply Place, and Zach and Tony's. Could you please tell us what the zoning is of those three properties?
I don't know.
Does your counsel know?
he's not a witness.
I think just context that, it's your residences and it's also your.
The board will look at the testimony as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
All right, board questions for Mr. McCusker.
I just have one. Do you know what your intended purpose for the types of storage that would be in there? Or would you, I heard you say something about
A
a friend,
contractor,
right?
plumbing
The plumber,
contractor.
right? Would you just solely rent to one individual or multiple?
I don't know, just, he may not need the whole space once he,
Mhm.
if we can come to some sort of resolution. It's a pretty big warehouse and, it might be two contractors. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
have a concrete answer.
Right. And of course, they would abide by the codes,
All
the
of our
rules, right?
codes, yes.
Okay, okay, that's all.
The type of contractor that you currently referred to was a plumbing contractor.
Yes.
Would that mean that they would keep acetylene in there?
I don't know. I don't know if he keeps
Would
it.
you
He doesn't
preclude
keep
it?
it at his house. I think they're mainly those little tanks are on his trucks all the time.
What I'm gonna ask is, would you preclude it from being stored there overnight?
If it's not allowed, of course.
Does the code, I guess this is a question for, does the code delineate between different types of indoor storage? Like, if there's an approval for indoor storage, does that mean anything?
I don't think the code delineates between types of indoor storage, but I believe the inquiry here is what is the legally existing non-conforming use being represented? And then in the context of a use variance, there can be some limitations on that use if the board so chooses.
And the only, from our code, everything that's mentioned in storage as far as use is storage in cold storage plants, storage indoor, storage outdoor, storage wholesale and warehousing. So those are the only categories we have. So if it's like a contractor storage, that would be kind of more of warehousing or contractor shop or a mixture of the two.
Or indoor storage, right?
Indoor storage, yeah, that would be probably an accessory use.
Okay. And so just so I'm clear, the applicant's, I guess, position is that the existing non-conforming use is indoor storage or warehousing?
It's really commercial storage with an office up front. So, and that's historically what it has been. There's that office, Mr. McCusker, has that office always been there to your
As far
knowledge?
as I know, yeah.
So there's a space for an office. So if it was a contractor, the office would be there for them.
Right.
But anyone who is storing the material in there basically for commercial purpose.
Okay, so commercial storage with, I guess, with an office. But for the purposes of how we describe that, it would be indoor storage with the purpose of with an office?
there's-
Or warehousing?
What-
Because those don't seem the same.
Or contractor shop. It's shop mill. I'm not sure what a shop mill is.
Yeah, I mean, it's neither here nor there because none of these are allowed in the R3, but
Well, I guess I'm just trying to make sure I understand exactly what we're saying the existing non-conforming uses.
Sir, I was struggling with that myself, because I don't think this kind of, I don't know if it's a hybrid use, but the office slash warehouse use squarely fit within what was listed in the ordinance. So we're just asking for continuation of the prior uses. So it's kind of a unicorn, so to speak, where it's, we're just asking for that to continue so that if, there was the prior contractors who used it, where there was probably historically some kind of office up front, even when it was a mill back in the day, with the material that they have in the back.
Okay.
I know that's probably not very helpful, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand. I guess my only struggle with that is like, how do you sort of police whether you're going outside the bounds of what you were doing if we don't really have a clear understanding of.
So
Like
is the representation specifically that the storage is related to the storage is somewhat accessory to the location of a contractor's office on this site? Is that what the representation is?
Yes, and
Oh,
Mr. Murphy.
Okay.
Also,
Okay,
it basically
let's-
had the office photos up front. And he had a storage business that, and he'll testify to this, but he took material from University of Pennsylvania, stored it in seasonally, returned it back down there, or got rid of it, sold it. So yes, I mean, there would always be some, whether it's a contractor or something like that, where there's an office up front and material in the back, but no manufacturing or anything like that is being proposed. And I know that there was a mill there back in the day. We don't know exactly whether they build the material inside or not, but they certainly stored it there.
Could have been done for Bond Shopping Center too.
Any other board questions?
Question, if the board is done, just to follow up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mr. McHugh.
Mr. McCusker, you own a business yourself, do you not?
Yes,
And what's that business?
trucking and demolition.
Okay. Do you ever, would you possibly use it for your business, or have you ever stored
No.
any of your own material there?
No,
Okay,
we have our own shop and warehouse in Chester.
okay. Just, sorry, one other thing. I know you said it before, but there was a question about how you would know if you didn't live on the block. But you've seen this building,
I used-
personally witnessed it since high school.
Yes. Used to walk up and down. A couple of my friends lived on the street. It was always the same building, a warehouse. It was never a house.
So I'm gonna follow up then, based on your question. You don't use it in relation to your business?
No.
Is it used in relation to any business since
Oh,
you've,
let me clarify. I dispatch my roll-off trucks. I do it from my pickup truck. I do it when I'm driving a truck. I can do it from home. I've done it from Florida. So some days I go there in the morning, get a cup of coffee, put the news on, answer the phone, and dispatch my drivers
you do conduct business out of the subject property?
on a part-time basis.
And do you is any portion of the storage on the property related to your business?
No,
So the storage is personal storage?
pretty much right
Or,
now, yeah.
I mean, we know we had some representations from the other parties of you, and you mentioned your sister. So this is, you use the storage as kind of courtesy space?
For now, yeah. I still have stuff from when my kids went to college that I have no use for sitting in there that, taking up space, just junk.
And has it ever been used for storage for your business?
No.
While you owned it?
No.
And is that during the appeal, where after you originally applied for?
Yeah, I started, clearing stuff out of my basement, attic, and garage and just shoving it down there.
so you're waiting basically to see, I guess it's sat for 6 years, but
Yeah,
I guess you're waiting to figure this out
figure it out and clear it
before
out
you
and
said.
rent it.
Anything else for Mr. McCusker, Mr. McHugh?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCusker.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Believe you have another witness?
Yes, my next witness would be Pat Murphy.
Mr. Murphy, once you get up here, we'll have you sworn in and you can.
Good evening, Mr. Murphy. You were here for Mr. McCusker's testimony.
I am,
Did you agree with everything he said?
yes,
Okay, and you own the property from March 2004 to June of 2015?
yes,
And did you use it as a warehouse with that office up front?
absolutely did.
Okay, and what kind of business was 8006 Property LLC?
Basic dorm furniture storage seasonally, like you said. We'd bring in a few times a year, we'd have some trucks come in. We'd place the product in there, and I had a small 15-foot box truck. We generally would load and distribute, but I'm talking, seasonally. But I use the office as my main office. I was there probably 3 to 5 days a week, a few hours a day. Yeah,
Okay, so you actually worked out of the office?
absolutely.
Okay, and was it Penn Building Services?
That's my business, and we rent it from 8006 LLC, which was the owner of the building, which is another company. It's basically the holding company for the building.
Got it. And then, what did you use the office for? Like, what kind of business did you do in the office?
Invoicing, estimating, file collection. It was absolutely a full-time office, yes.
Okay. And did you pay similar taxes to what Mr. McCusker testified when you owned it?
Absolutely.
Did you ever abandon that use while you owned it?
Never.
Did you ever intend to abandon that use?
Absolutely not.
Exhibit A6, is that the permit history from the township?
It is. I believe so, yes.
Okay.
8006 property. Yep.
And it's dated from, in the top left-hand corner, it's dated October 28, 2014?
Yes.
So this was during your ownership?
Yes.
Was this when you were getting ready to sell the property?
Yes.
Okay, and you heard Mr. McCusker's testimony about the milling, storage, and office?
Yeah, I've, all those stories from the milling through the previous company, I guess, Darlington Group. They had a security monitoring company there. He also, I know if he didn't, he had warehoused a lot of hardwood flooring materials, because I know that for a fact, because when I bought it, it was part of the deal that I would clear out the warehouse. So there was a lot of old flooring materials in the warehouse, and, I cleared it out when I bought it.
Okay. Is Exhibit A7, is that the marketing flyer when you purchased the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and again, you purchased it in 2004?
Yes.
And it indicates that it would be a great contractor's home base.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And that's your handwriting in the upper right-hand corner?
It is, yes,
Did you give that to Mr. McCusker when you sold it to him?
I did.
And do you know any of the prior uses, including the plumber that Mr. McCusker mentioned?
Yeah, I know it was used by several different, I had a conversation with the previous owner. Like I said, he had, at the end of his business there, he was doing a security monitoring. And like I said, I cleared out all the materials. There was all kinds of old contractor materials, flooring. It was there for a long time, so it was a mixed match of, but we loaded like 3 dumpsters when we cleared out the building when I bought it. So it was absolutely a warehouse.
Okay. And Exhibit A8, that's your deed when you bought it in 2004, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions for the witness.
All right, we'll open it up. Ms. O'Brien, do you have any questions for Mr. Murphy?
And offer proof substantiating your allegations that this business, or this property was used as a business prior? Or is it, because it sounds like it's just hearsay,
I have plenty of pictures.
and you didn't bring them tonight?
No.
I didn't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Mr. or Mrs. Kane, do either of you have any questions for Mr. Murphy? Mrs. Kane, do you have any questions?
Did you ever use any larger trucks than a small truck, like a big truck parked on Cedar Lane and have chairs rolled up the street?
Over the years, I would have a trailer once or twice a year. It was a 53-foot trailer. And I did this for 10 years, and only in the 9th or 10th year was it a problem, and therefore, I knew it was time to go.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Kane. Board questions for Mr. Murphy?
I have none.
All right, I think we're good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. McHugh, do you have anything else you'd like to present in your case in chief?
I would just move for the introduction of admission of exhibits A1 through A9.
Is there any objection from any of the parties as to the exhibits in the packet? Okay. To which exhibit?
Sorry, one sec, I'm just pulling it out.
Sure.
I have an objection to the acceptance of A6,
Okay.
which seems to be a screenshot of a computer. I don't feel it's been properly authenticated. I don't feel that it rises to the level of, to the evidentiary level that Pennsylvania adheres to.
Before I ask some questions related to that objection, for the record, it is understood that before the zoning hearing board, we do not abide by the Pennsylvania rules of evidence.
Okay.
The standard for evidence before the zoning hearing board is reasonable and relevant.
Mhm.
And so I will ask a question, and Mr. McHugh, I don't know if Mr. McCusker is the one to answer this since he did testify to this exhibit. Mr. McCusker, if you can come back up.
And I'm not sure also if Mr. Murphy can help elaborate on.
I'm just going to ask about because it's an authentication objection here. So do you know do you know the source of this image?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't remember where it came from.
All right. Do you have a witness that knows the source of this image?
I would ask Mr. Murphy.
Okay, Mr. Murphy, can you come forward?
And I can probably ask about the,
It was from before I owned it.
So testimony is one thing, but we're just going to talk about the exhibit itself, this A6. Mr. Murphy, do you know the source of this image?
It appears to be just basically a list of, I guess, permits pulled or work done.
So I know what it represents. I didn't know, have you ever seen,
The actual document, it's been 10 years.
okay. Do you know where this image would have been generated from? Either you or Mr. McCusker?
If I have an opinion, I mean, it's a professional document. It was taken off
So
a device. Looks like a government device to me.
fair enough. So we're gonna, Mr. McHugh, did you collect this image?
It does test the memory, but this was one of the exhibits that we presented in 2016, which was, at that time, what Mr. McCusker obtained from Mr. Murphy about the property.
Okay. So based on that, I guess there is really nothing here to identify the source in it. We're going to note for the record for Exhibit A6 that the board will give it the appropriate weight in making its decision. And we'll just put the asterisk next to that when it comes to A6, and we'll admit the remainder of the exhibits without objection. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the case in chief of the applicant. Ms. O'Brien, you can stay where you are if you'd like, but this is your opportunity to present testimony, evidence, and argument, if you will. But we will note that both Mr. McHugh and, if they want to, the Canes will have the opportunity to ask you questions in relation to your testimony.
I'm going to remain seated if that's okay.
That is fine, unless the board has any objections.
I have a bad
That would
leg,
make
so,
it-
okay, thanks. Deaf,
Sure.
bad leg. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be heard this evening. I'm just going to state, I have some documents I'd like to move into evidence. One is a written statement from myself today, and I do have a copy for you, Mr. McHugh. That's the whole packet. It just it just lays out my reasons for objecting. I'll go through it real quickly. And then there's also a petition of the neighbors of the 8,000 block of Arlington Avenue that was signed by 14 of the 9 residents of that little block.
So Ms. O'Brien, I'm just going to stop you momentarily right there. It is the board's practice that we do not accept petitions. We accept the testimony of those present in the room that the board can ask questions of, as well as the applicant. So
That's fine. This was already admitted into evidence in the past. It's from 2016,
Okay.
from the prior thing. And then also the board's November 20th, 2014 opinion denying Mr. Murphy's application to have his use declared as a existing non-conforming use. So I refer to those. And then just very quickly as, I'm sorry.
do you have copies for the board? of
I do,
those three?
yes.
Okay, so
I can hand them up now if you'd like. That's fine.
they're also part of our greater record that you will have access to.
Oh, you know what? Here's. Sorry, I only brought 4 copies, but I can email them if anybody needs them.
Sorry, Deb. So we'll mark the summary of your statement, which Mr. McHugh can cross-examine you on.
Sure.
As do you mind if we use K as your identifier?
That's
Okay,
fine.
K1, we will mark sorry, just trying to look here. So this is the petition that is represented to have been introduced at the 2016 hearing on this matter as K2. And then we will mark what was noted as the decision from 2014 as K3. I'm sorry, this is a letter from the
Oh, right, the
Doms.
neighbors,
I'm
I'm
gonna pass this
sorry.
back to you because
Yeah,
like I
I'm
said,
sorry that got caught up. Thank you. So my testimony today is based on the fact that I've lived on the 8,000 block of Arlington Avenue since April of 2003. I rented for 2 years, and then I rented at 8014 Arlington Avenue, and then I bought my house at 8010 Arlington Avenue in September of 2006. I don't go to the shore. I don't go away for the summer. I reside on that street continuously year-round. So I have been there, and to the extent I work from home. So I'm home all the time. My testimony today boils down to 3 distinct areas. One is health and safety, one is residential property values, and the third is density. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly. The health and safety argument revolves around the fact that any proposed commercial use is going to bring noise. Pickup trucks, we already have, I believe, Mr. McCuskers, he can testify, but I believe it's a diesel truck. We get, there'll be, if there are trucks, they're going to have backup alarms. This is a residential neighborhood, so there's going to be noise, there's going to be diesel fumes, backup alarms. There's already insufficient parking. As we heard, and as I showed, there's no parking is supposed to be allowed right in front of the property. And that leaves only really nowhere else for it to park because Mr. Flood takes up the spots from the corner to the X'd out part. So I'm not sure where there would be conformance with the code as far as requiring, at the very least, 1 dedicated parking spot. We already have parking issues because the houses were built on my side of the street, which is the same side as 8006. They were built in 1950 by the same builder. And there's only a shared driveway. We don't have our own dedicated driveways, so we constantly have parking issues because when the houses were built, not everybody had cars. Now, each address has at least 2 cars, and my address is 8010. The house to the left of me is 8008. It's a twin, and then it's 4 units in those 2 houses, and they're rental units. So we have more cars than we can already handle for the legal residents of this residentially zoned neighborhood. Parking is a huge concern of ours. We have children who play in the street. There's a handicapped neighbor up the street who's confined to a wheelchair. And she's very independent, but she can only drive down the street in her wheelchair because there's no sidewalk, I guess ADA compliance. And it's just concerning that on this 1-lane, very narrow, one-way street, that we have children, we have pets, we have residents, and we have at least one resident who's confined to a wheelchair. So introducing more trucks to the neighborhood is a huge safety concern. As far as density, that sort of piggybacks on the health and safety argument in the sense that this neighborhood does not have any more room for parking. It doesn't have any more room for, and I think Mr. McCusker has said that he's not going to do this, but for putting up a duplex there. And I will note, and I didn't bring it with me, but I can produce it later, but I've looked at all the deeds for the houses on my side of the block that back up on the shared driveway that runs behind our houses. 8006 absolutely does not have legal access to our driveway. They do not. So there's a driveway.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to object. I mean, there's not only facts that there's no supporting record for, but there's also legal conclusions in there that there's, and it's just not before this board to decide whether there's adverse possession or prescriptive rights that a building that has existed there by her testimony 50 years before her house existed there did not have access to the area.
You're talking solely about the driveway issue?
Driveway.
And all parties understood that the driveway issue isn't before the board. So I'm not going to cut you off. We're not going to strike it or anything, but you can proceed. But note that driveway issue isn't before the board as to part of the legally existing non-conforming nature of the property.
It was introduced at the hearing in 2016. I'm just letting you know.
Ma'am, we're here tonight because there were, the court has identified that the hearing held in 2016 was legally insufficient, which is why the matter has been remanded back to the board.
Okay, well, no
So
one
to-
ever told us that. So.
I did make an announcement as.
You said it was remanded, but you didn't say why, and I never got a copy of it. So I was not familiar with at all the reason why it was remanded.
Understood. I'm letting you know now.
Okay.
You were not a party on the appeal
Right.
to the Court of Common Pleas either. So it was remanded because the 2016 hearing has been determined to be legally insufficient as to evidence related to the legally existing non-conforming nature of the property and that
Okay.
argument being made. And that's the opportunity being given tonight, as well as the determination as to whether any other evidence supports the burden for a variance. Within the purview of what's been noticed for the board, the rights to access along the side of the property or use of the driveway are not before the board. That's a personal property issue. And I don't think the board has heard any testimony from the applicant affirmatively stating they have a right to use that. And even if we did, we would not be considering that issue nor putting it as part of our decision in this remand matter.
Okay, I'd like a copy of the remand order. If future time, I don't need it now, but I'd like to take a look at it.
I do not have one on me, but it is publicly available
Okay.
on the dockets of Delaware
Great,
County.
thanks. So again, health and safety, we already went over that density, and then residential property values. The Upper Darby Township Zoning Code clearly states that health and safety and residential property values are the 3 most important purposes of the code. And I don't see how anyone could argue that allowing a commercial use that in fact has not been ongoing since I've been living there in 2003, that allowing that would definitely deleteriously affect our residential, the quality of the residential neighborhood and the resale values. So that's all I have to say on it. Everything else I already passed up, so.
Mr. McHugh, do you have any questions for Ms. O'Brien?
Just a couple.
Sure.
Ms. O'Brien, the petition that you handed up,
Mhm.
2016,
Yes,
that was preceded by a similar petition that was handed up at the 2014 zoning hearing board hearing before my client owned the property, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you would agree with me in that petition, you signed that petition, by the way, did you not?
Which one are you referring to?
The 2014 petition that was handed up to the zoning hearing board?
I believe so. I didn't have a copy of it to bring, but I do believe I did.
Okay, and that actually says that the property, the warehouse was historically used large trucks to make frequent deliveries of product stored at 8006, did it not?
I don't know. I don't have a copy of it. You didn't provide one to me.
Highlighted language there, on what I'll mark as Exhibit 810. And it does say that use there at that time.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry, is this a exhibit we have in evidence already, or is this just a cross-examination exhibit?
Cross-examined, it's a new exhibit.
This is not the petition that was provided as K2?
No, it's a similar petition that was presented in 2014.
Understood.
That is a hypothetical statement.
Okay, on the first page.
Well, I'm sorry, are we admitting this into evidence such that I can be cross-examined on it? I didn't bring it up.
I think you are being cross-examined on it.
Are we admitting it into evidence?
Doesn't have to be in evidence for
Okay.
counsel to ask you questions on it, on cross-examination.
That on page 5, well, the first page, I'll read it to you. Let me know.
How can I be crossed on something I didn't bring up? I didn't bring up a prior petition.
You brought up your part.
Never used before for the uses that we've testified about. I'm cross-examining her on that point. Ms. O'Brien, this is called Petition of Highland Park Neighbors in Opposition to 8006 Property LLC's application for a variance for 8006 Arlington Avenue, Upper Darby, October 30, 2014, UD Township Zoning Hearing Board. Do you see that?
I have to bring a closer, but I'm assuming you read it correctly. Yes.
Okay, and that's on the first page of the document.
Mhm.
Your signature is there on page 3 of 6, is it not? Karen E. O'Brien?
5 of 6, but yes.
Okay, page 5 of 6. And on page 2 of 6, it says in the 5th paragraph down, to legalize a warehouse that has historically used large trucks to make frequent deliveries of products stored at 8006. The statement that I just read, the sentence starts off with that, does it not?
Yes, and then it continues, would be to encourage. It's a hypothetical. It's not stating a fact.
It actually does. It says,
It doesn't.
We're encouraging, well, I'll read the whole thing here.
Okay, go ahead.
And let me know if I'm reading it incorrectly. To legalize a warehouse that has historically used large trucks to make frequent deliveries of products stored at 8006 would be to encourage and exacerbate massive traffic and parking problems and thereby endanger the safety and health of the neighborhood children, adults, pets, wildlife, and the general public who live or walk on this block of Arlington Avenue, correct?
Correct. And are we going to read the whole thing into it? Because it talks about how this owner only started using it in 2014.
Well, what I'm going to.
I'm sorry, 2014, excuse me.
I'm going to put this entire thing into evidence, but it also says below that the proposed and actual use necessitates the frequent use of large trucks, including, but not limited to, 18-wheel big rigs to drop off and pick up shipments of product to, from the 8006 garage. Does it not say that?
It says that. Again, you're taking this out of context. This petition was about the 6 months prior to that, the summer of 2014, when Mr. Murphy started bringing in trucks. It says nothing about it being continuous use prior to that.
Okay. Just to that word there says historically used large trucks.
Since 2014. It states in the beginning of the petition, if I'm not mistaken, that that's what we're discussing.
I'll hand in the whole exhibit as exhibit A.
Be my guest.
Well, A11 then?
Sorry?
Isn't this A11?
Oh.
I thought we had 10 in your packet. Let me just check. You're right, A10. Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, do you have, this is being handed to the board now. Do you have objection to this being part of the record already in the 2014?
I thought we weren't admitting things from 2014, or we are?
I marked your exhibit from,
Okay,
from
that's fine then.
2016, correct?
16, but not 14.
This has now been used in this matter on cross-examination. Now Mr. McHugh can put on some evidence as to the origin of this, whether this was Mr. Murphy is here from
That's
his
fine.
thing. I'm asking if you have an objection to this.
No, it's fine.
We can still have Mr. Murphy testify as to whether this was part of that case.
It's fine, as long as you read the whole thing in the context of it.
So we'll mark this as A10. The board can have access to it.
And I have no further questions.
Mr. or Mrs. Kane, do you have any questions for Ms. O'Brien? Okay. Does the board have questions for Ms. O'Brien? No. All right. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien.
Sure, thank you.
So Mr. and Mrs. Kane, now is your opportunity to present testimony, evidence, argument. You're welcome to use the podium. You're also welcome to come over and sit if you'd like, as long as we have you at a microphone.
You want to sit there? Okay. A point of note here. The notice for this hearing for 8006 Arlington was not posted until Thursday, October the 10th. That is the first time I saw either the notice down at the sidewalk or in the window. That is not 2 weeks prior to this hearing. It's short by a couple days. Just thought I'd bring that to your attention. All right. I heard a claim, and we're doing fantasy here. 1900, a sawmill across the street from my house. Well, that building is not from 1900. Now, I'm no expert on construction, but I'm sure somebody who is an expert on construction can look at that building and say that it is not from 1900. So whatever business or whatever was going on back that time, I know this is before zoning was formalized. I think it was in 1939. So yeah, Murphy had the place, Fedor had the place. Yeah, but there's no documentation to make this legal for zoning purposes. So, you know, this is why we're here. You know, somebody just moves in and does business. It's not very popular with the neighbors. Mr. McCusker, he's got a desire to rent the space to whoever it will be. But from what we have seen, it is Mr. Flood who has the junkyard at the corner. Now, that's a whole other issue, but we don't want the junkyard expanded at all, any more than it's already been expanded. I have photos that I will present to you. This is from July 2020. It shows Mr. Flood in a forklift driving into the property. I will hand them out. I mean, you can have them, but I only have one set, unfortunately. I'm not prepared like everybody else.
Also, there's a similar vehicle, I think it's called a Bobcat. Again, it's Mr. Flood going into or out of the property. It's a box, I believe it's a box of copper, scrap copper, which I guess he can't secure on his property, so he goes and uses it in the building. Puts it in the building for storage. It's probably not secure out in the open. Also, the Bobcat on the street, I don't think this is street legal, but that's just my opinion. We got one of Mr. Flood's employees using a power wash on the truck. This is in May of '23. Mr. Flood's truck with one of his dumpsters on the back. It's a Peterbilt truck, big diesel truck, not a pickup truck. That's June 22nd of this year. Another one of Mr. Flood's truck with the dump, in the dump position, washing it out. Who knows what he's washing out from there? Goes on the street. It's headed in the wrong direction. It's a one-way street. And it's truck restricted street too, by the way, which he ignores daily. And nice picture of Mr. Flood and his truck. So I will submit these to you. Also, my wife has put together a timeline of events for the record.
Josh, can you show the timeline to, thank you.
And in
All right,
the
Ms.
2016, it was clear at that point that Mr. McCusker couldn't say why he bought the building in the first place. And you have to understand that our major objection is that neither he nor Mr. Murphy before him showed any care of us as neighbors. You know, we have pictures of the stuff that was left in front of that building when Mr. Murphy had it. We don't have them with us, obviously, because we didn't know he was going to be here. But
we didn't think we'd have to go back.
it's just a matter of, you're telling us you want to use it as a warehouse, and some of that sounds reasonable. I mean, it doesn't, but the thing is that the actors have not shown themselves to be trustworthy. And with what is going on at the property next door, you know, why should we agree to this? Why should we not say what we feel we should say as property owners? Karen said she's home a lot. I raised 2 kids watching what went on over there, and it's extremely frustrating. And, you know, I mean, why should we feel like we should give people a break who've never given us one?
So how many photos are here, Mr. Kane?
I believe about 6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're going to collectively mark these 7 photos as P, as in Paul, 1. Is there any objection to this?
This I do, because it relates to 2004.
Yeah, well, from 2016 on, it has to do with that, and there's no way to divorce the 2 things.
What I was saying is my objection is the timeline there relates to the property 8004 Arlington, which is not on the application.
All right.
While we sympathize with their concerns about the flood property, we're not Mr. Flood, and we're getting effectively blamed for Mr. Flood's sins.
Everybody just hold on just a second.
Okay.
Just
2016
one
on.
minute, Mrs.
Yeah.
Kane. So, Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
I'm going to sustain the objection in part and overrule it in part. And the reason is that this is the vast majority of this relates to the flood property.
With the 2016 on,
Wait,
yeah.
hold on. Relates to the flood property, and which is not germane to the request before us. However, I'm going to note two of these entries, which is where I'm overruling Mr. McHugh here, and I'm going to read them into the record, okay? And I'm going to ask you to confirm that this is what you wrote in this outline.
Yes.
So the first is an entry August 2015, where it says Arlington Avenue neighbors circulate a petition to forbid parking of commercial trucks on Arlington Avenue and submit petition to Upper Darby Township. The no parking restriction for commercial trucks went into effect in September 2015. Is that accurate?
I believe so, you know.
To your
it's-
to your recollection.
My recollection, yeah.
And then the other entry is the 28th of April, 2016. You wrote, Mr. Daniel J. McCusker, owner of 8006 Arlington Avenue, goes before the Upper Darby Township Zoning Board to reactivate the use of the building for commercial purposes. During the hearing, it is revealed that he intends to rent the building to Mr. J.P. Flood and his scrap business. It was clear from the discussion that Mr. McCusker could not explain why he bought the building, and his original intent for it other than to rent it out. We believe that it may have been a straw purchase to allow Mr. Flood to expand his business further. Mr. Flood has access to the building and has been seen going in and out of it when Mr. McCusker is not present. Hold on. Unbeknownst to us, there was a meeting in the fall of 2015, we'll note approximate, between the township officials, Mayor Thomas McCosey, CAO Thomas Judge, and newly elected 4th District Councilman Mark Manfree, Manfree. Mr. Flood and Mr. McCusker and selected neighbors, maybe 2 or 3 neighbors. This meeting was about plans to place a garage door on the side of 8006 Arlington adjacent to Mr. Flood's property and block up an existing garage door on the west side of the building adjacent to the alleyway that serves the duplexes and twins on the south side of Arlington Avenue. At this time, Mr. Flood owns 4 large commercial vehicles and employs 3 or 4 helpers. This is a substantial change from the operation of the original owner. We fear further expansion, noise, and traffic from an expanded business operation for Mr. Flood. Is that all accurate to your recollection?
To my recollection,
Okay.
it's accurate.
So that's now in the record as to Mrs. Kane's statements related to
And that meeting,
8006.
we were not asked to that meeting.
Okay.
My husband and I.
Do you have anything else you'd like to put on the record, Mrs. Kane?
No.
Okay, so.
Like I said, it's so many years now, but that's why I wrote a lot of this down.
I just want to, I don't want to belabor this, but, you know, we're interested in traffic safety, noise, pollution, children on the street, you know, and our property values.
Oh, yeah, our property value.
Right, so, you know, I don't want to, you know, beat a dead horse here, but, you know, I second all that.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Kane, I'm now going to I have to offer to Mr. McHugh to ask if he has any questions of the two of you based on your testimony. And before I turn over the board, I have just maybe 1 or 2 questions for Mrs. Kane, if you'll let me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss Ryan.
Mr. and Mrs. Kane, Paul.
Sorry, can you just ask one of them at a time?
Sure.
Send us our message, just one.
Yeah, sure. Paul, sorry, yeah, okay. Paul, when, in what month and year did you buy your house on 8000 Arlington?
It was July of 1982. 1982.
July of 1982.
July
Okay,
82.
thank you.
What year, when did Mr. and Mrs. Kane buy their house, it was July of 1982.
And have you lived there continuously since?
I have, yes.
Right.
82, and I've been there since we were married in 91.
So, Mrs. Kane, just to be clear for the board, you state in your entry of 28 April 2016 that was read into the record, you say to reactivate the use of the building. Mr. McCusker wants to reactivate the use of the building for commercial purposes. What was your understanding of the use of the property prior to Mr. McCusker's petition in 2016?
I don't know. I don't recall what was in my mind then. I know, I mean, it was being used by Mr. Murphy after Fedor sold it to him. So I don't know. I mean, it's obviously never been a residence, but Fedor's use of it was relatively benign. I mean,
When you say Fedor, what can you spell that for us?
Fedor.
And what was their business?
When you moved in.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, what is Fedor?
He did do flooring at one time.
It was a flooring contractor.
You guys just have to testify, I guess, just one at a time, okay? Because I can't keep track.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
A flooring contractor, and he also branched out into security.
So at the time that you moved in you bought the house in 1982, Mr. Fedor ran a flooring contracting business out of the location?
Yes, he did.
And did he operate that location up until Mr. Murphy purchased the property?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And there was one other thing here.
From 91, from when I was there, I mostly saw him do security. I think he kind of gave up on the flooring for the most part, but we don't know for certain. But I only remember him as the security guy.
So, Mrs. Kane, since when you moved into the street in 1991 until Mr. Murphy purchased the property, was there a some type of business operating out of the property?
Mr. Fedor and his wife would come every day. They'd use the office, and but there was no big trucks. There were nothing. Just them and they worked the office. That's it.
I think that was the only question I had. Thank you. Board questions.
I have a question. I guess for the record, this is directed at Mrs. Sorry, what was
Kane.
Mrs. Kane. You testified earlier that how'd you put it? Oh, that you were watching what was going on across the street while raising your two kids.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's post 91 when you moved in there.
Yeah.
What did you mean by
They
that?
were born in 95 and 97, so,
Okay.
I raised them, got them to school, I homeschooled one of them for 6 years, so I was there.
So what did you mean by like watching what was going on? What did you mean by watching what was going
You
on?
saw our house. Our house it's long this way, and there's a big picture window in the living room and one in the dining room. And in the dining room, I have a bird's eye view of everything that goes on across the street. So, I mean, I was there feeding my kids, homeschooling, and I could see everything that went on the street.
Right. So I guess I'm asking like, what were you seeing to make you say that? Like what?
Like when Fedor was there, not much, but when Mr. Murphy came, there were times that there would be big trucks parked on Cedar Lane. There would be groups of young men pushing chairs up the street, and we have pictures of trash that was left in front of the property when he had it. So it's like not like what he did was benign either. There's only so much you can complain, You have to live too.
Other board questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Kane, for your testimony.
Thank you.
I guess that is there any rebuttal? And then I guess it would be appropriate at this time. Actually, we've had plenty of argument throughout this. Is there any desire for anyone to sum up their argument at this point?
I think in the late hour, the board understands the abandonment and
Right. So everybody can have a seat. Is there anybody, I know we have at least one person, Madam Chair, who expressed interest in making public comment earlier. Is there any public comment? Sorry. Sir, did you want to make a statement?
Yeah.
So if you can introduce yourself.
My name is Michael Gallagher.
Can we have Mr. Gallagher sworn in, please?
Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Gallagher.
Basically, I've lived there for going on 37 years now. And to my knowledge,
Not
nobody
to
has
interrupt
ever.
you, sir, but where's there?
What's that?
Where do you live?
I live at 437 South Cedar Lane,
Thank you.
right around the corner.
Go ahead.
And to my knowledge, there's never been anybody living there. It's always been some type of business. That's about all I had to say.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Suggest to the board that we at least go into a brief executive session. All right, so we'll briefly recess. explain a lot about the.
See,
They have to go. Oh, are they, they're not on the hall? Let's check to see if they're in the hall. They knew you were coming back, right? Well, they'll get a
Yeah.
decision. They're all parties. And they actually gave me email addresses.
On the right form?
Let me tell you, no, not on the right form, but it's fine. As long as I have an email address and a name, I'm happy. I hate when I have to put something in the mail. Determined to be? Yeah. That is a motion. Ready? We'll come back in. All right, the board met in executive session to deliberate, and I believe the board has a motion to make.
I'd like to make a motion that this board recognizes the subject property to be a contractor's office, or excuse me, to be existing non-conforming contractor's office with associated storage. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
those in favor?
All those in favor? Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none. Okay, so the board's decision is that it is determined to be a legally existing non-conforming use of contractor's office with associated storage. The variance request in the alternative is therefore moot, and we will issue a written decision within 45 days, which will be transmitted to the parties and back to the Court of Common Pleas as part of this. All right?
Thank you.
Sure. Is there any further business?
Motion
What was your motion?
that we go home.